Wander versus Phaedra, Manless Horsehead. So that was the Phaedra battle. Now, as we've all grown up through our childhoods and heard the wonderful and fantastical tales of mythical heroes going through unimaginable conflict and strife in order to save his country from whatever evil force was threatening at the borders, and yes, to get the girl who was compelled by mythical story tradition to completely throw herself at the hero of the hour who had saved her life while killing the big baddie. My point is that in these stories of epic heroes and fantastical tales of different times where people lived amongst the kingdom or the usual Wild West character shtick, the heroes are usually found at one point or another in the story to be an expert horse rider, and that's because the picturesque view of the manly man on a noble steed inherently brings up that romanticism underwriting all of these crazy stories. However, in this case, this horse is riding solo. Right off the bat, Phaedra has a problem. Horses, just like any other vehicle, have found their way into action game set pieces in which the hero does hero things while riding, and there are definitely boss fights where they employ vehicles such as horses. But there are a few cases, maybe no cases, of the boss fight employing only the horse. So Phaedra is riding off into the sunset without a comparison, and looking at this, I wouldn't give out much hope for horse-only boss fights. In this context, horses don't really have a lot of surface area on their legs as they have evolved to be fast rather than strong, even though their back kick will still kill a guy if they get the chance. So Team Ico had to develop a different way for the player to climb onto Phaedra without the legs being coated in vines, and their solution to this problem is like doing a belly flop from the high dive onto a sea mine. See, what the player has to do is trick Phaedra into looking down into the underground tunnels the game gives Wander to get around the battlefield and then climb onto it when it climbs over the slight rise above the entrance in order to get onto his back. My main issue with this approach is that it's made unclear to the player of what the hell we were supposed to do when we get here, and leads me perfectly into another defining boss fight cliche: the shadow weakness. A shadow weakness is when the boss's weakness is so obtuse and or arbitrary, combined with the game either taking incredibly vague jabs at what the answer is supposed to, or not saying anything at all about it to the point where the only way to beat the boss is either dumb luck or shared information, i.e. the internet. During my playthrough, I spent the first 20 minutes trying to exploit janky physics, jumping onto him with the surrounding trees or the tops of the tunnel entrances themselves, trying to get onto him with platforming, and then running away when he caught me mid-attempt. In the end, I had to look up how to beat this guy on the internet, and I'll admit that with little shame, because the actual jump to get onto Phaedra is right at the maximum of your jump distance, which makes it seem like the developers were just crowbarring in this weak point at the end of the day. However, at this point, the entire challenge of the fight is thrown out like ballast, as Phaedra really has nothing more up his hooves to challenge the player. Again, you do the usual sigil stabbing and wait for Phaedra to stop trying to shake you off his head before killing him, and that's the end of this wild horse. I could say that it makes up for it in a story sense by being all alone in this corner of this world, but saying that I had to use game facts to beat this guy and not because it's inherently difficult, and instead it's because of a BS defense, that doesn't shine a positive light on the development team. So I'll just stop beating around the bush and let the scoreboard make the verdict clear. Gameplay. I spent the first part of this boss fight trying to exploit the game in order to get on the horse because I had no idea how to do it since the parts I could grab were always too far away. And after plenty of useless attempts, I used the internet to beat this guy, which reflects bad design as well as non-motivation for me to figure it out myself. Other than that, there's really not much more here. Grab and stab is the name of the game, so for what it's worth, I'll give Phaedra 2 Triforces on this front. Story. Just like Quadraz, the incompetence in the combat scenario combined with Phaedra's location and situation lends itself to the overall story oddly well. It's a horse, a creature that is traditionally partnered with a superior ally for the overall benefit, and without that partnership, the horse is just a wild beast completely dependent on its environment and instinct for survival. And here comes the first human it has purportedly seen in centuries, just to strike him where he stands. The monster's player gives Phaedra a respectable 7 2/3 Triforces. Fun. From my previous rambling, I'm guessing that you at home can guesstimate that if fun's what you're after, then Phaedra is not going to help. The first 20 minutes of this battle were insufferable and the complete unknown haunting this entire experience, and the underground tunnels just outright confusing me. This could have been help from the light spirits giving me reasonable clues on how to win this fight, but their words were vague at best, which left me with no other option than to admit defeat and contact the internet for an answer. One facepalm later and I was on Phaedra's back, but since I had to look up the weakness, that completely stole away any actual achievement from this boss fight. So with the words frustrating, vague, and insufferable underlining Phaedra, the categorical points for this horse will be 2/3 Triforce. In this battle with manless horsehead Phaedra, the obtuseness of fighting such a wild beast left me and Wander getting incredibly frustrated, which gave us the motivation to start asking the Almighty to give us the knowledge that will allow us to finally strike down this forsaken beast. And after acquiring his favor, the horse was cut down inside 3 minutes, with Wander leaving with the disappointment of one of nature's greatest beings being reduced to this pile, only worth a disappointing 10 1/3 Triforces. Good night, you depressing majestic. As always, I will leave you with this. Victory for gamers. See you next time.